Hi there, I'm Jeff Smith. Welcome into the WTOL 11 Vault on Plus. It's our chance to dive into the archives and share our community's history. This week, we're dedicating our program to the life of former President Jimmy Carter. President Carter died at 100 years of age on December 29, 2024. He was the first U.S. president to mark 1 century of life, and he was no stranger to Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan.
Jimmy Carter came to Toledo looking for votes in October of 1980 and to visit Start High School and visit the farm of Don Schaller in Waterville.
The plan is for President Carter to deliver his major farm policy address tomorrow while standing on this small wooden wagon with the cornfields and the silos in the background. If it rains, the President and the Secretary of Agriculture will move into this metal barn located right next to the Schallers' home. About 200 invited farmers will be present for the speech. It will not be open to the public.
And while President Carter is known for his charity and humanitarian work, other presidents have made our area a prominent stop in their campaigns for the White House. And there's always a lot of excitement.
Well, he's the president. He's different from everybody. He's like one of the main people involved with the United States.
A big enough deal, these children got out the pie plates and paint to make a model train like the one that will bring President Clinton to Ohio.
Or if he's coming in on a train, so why don't we make a train? We were going to make it like 3 of them, but we didn't. It'd be too much.
I've never really got anybody popular's autograph, and I knew everybody else would be making trains and all kind of different signs, so I just decided to make the White House. I thought no one else would be making it.
You want to undo the flags there?
They're really having a good time, and there's some really creative stuff here. I'm really excited about it. I think it's clear there's been a lot of energy put into it.
Now, Ohio has a prominent presidential history. 8 of them have been born Buckeyes. And the saying used to be, as goes Ohio, so goes the nation.
We now are going to return to Deschler, where President Ronald Reagan has just taken his Whistle Stop campaign back into our area. And Jeff Heitz, what's going on right now?
Your Congressman Del Latta comes out here and introduces me. There were 2 names on that bill that cut the cost of government and that cut your taxes when we started our new program in '81, and one of those 2 names was Congressman Del Latta. Well, it's great to be in Deschler.
We've been told the president's been giving basically the same speech on all of his stops with a couple of changes in his lead paragraphs to tell the people where he is, of course.
And it's great to see all of you here in this Buckeye State.
Now we're going to focus on the life of President Jimmy Carter. He is a man who sought peace and compassion over power and influence. A man whose legacy extends far beyond his years in the Oval Office. A man who, many years ago, spent time right here in Northwest Ohio. It was Saturday, October 25th in 1980. Air Force One touched down at Toledo Express. Mr. Carter would speak, at Start High School. Then it was off to Waterville Township to visit a farm owned by Don and Carolyn Schaller. Toledo 11 News reporter Dick Berry and anchor Bob Lawrence teamed up to give us a look at all the preparations ahead of that moment in history.
Steve Leroy is a front man for the White House. During the last 5 days, Leroy has been surrounded by ringing telephones, working out all the massive details of a presidential visit. He's the man responsible for making sure stages are set up, phones are plugged in, and press credentials are issued. 200 national reporters will accompany the president. Another 200 local ones are expected. Detail is what Leroy's job is all about.
Where on the tarmac Air Force One's going to be placed, where the sun position is so that the photographers don't shoot into the sun, how many cars we're going to have in the motorcade. We have to go out and get specific kinds of vehicles. We have to get station wagons for the networks so they can stand on back of the station wagon on the tailgate and take pictures of the motorcades moving in case there's an accident.
Meanwhile, Start High, site of the president's town hall meeting, is getting ready for the visit. This morning, chairs for the 1,000 ticket holders were set up, and students were painting welcome signs. The presidential podium still hadn't been unpacked yet, but Ohio Bell technicians were busy installing dozens of press phones. Several of those phones will be patched directly to 2 local hospitals in the event of an emergency. From Start High, the president heads off to Waterville. More on that visit from Bob Lawrence.
This is the busiest time of the year at the Don Schaller Farm in Waterville Township. Schaller and his family farm 600 acres of corn, soybeans, and winter wheat. But tomorrow, the eyes of the nation will focus on the Schallers' front yard as President Carter, accompanied by Agriculture Secretary Berglund, turns his campaign toward America's farmers. The plan is for President Carter to deliver his major farm policy address tomorrow while standing on this small wooden wagon with the cornfields and the silos in the background. If it rains, the President and the Secretary of Agriculture will move into this metal barn located right next to the Schallers' home. About 200 invited farmers will be present for the speech. It will not be open to the public. No parking will be permitted along Dutch Road in front of the Schallers' home. A shuttle bus will carry guests from the parking lot of the Anthony Wayne Local Schools complex to the Schaller farm. At this point, Don Schaller still isn't sure why his farm was selected by the White House.
No, not exactly. It's my understanding, though, that they were looking for a grain farm with crops growing near the grain facility, and this qualifies in that regard. As far as personally me, I have no idea.
Did they ask if you were a Democrat?
No, that was never mentioned.
Mrs. Schaller is a nursing student at Wayne State University and is worried about a paper she's supposed to have completed by Monday. She laughingly asked a Carter advance person if the president could write her an excuse for submitting the paper late. Local police, Secret Service agents, and telephone installers just about took over at the Schallers' place today. Very little farm work got done, but there were still some chores which could not be avoided. Bob Lawrence, Toledo 11 News in Waterville Township.
As the tributes to President Carter poured in, Don Schaller, he never forgot that encounter. And as luck would have it, WTOL 11's Laura Sandlin caught up with him after the former president's death in 2024.
It was Wednesday night on October 22nd, 1980, when Don Schaller got a call from the local Farm Bureau president in Monclova. He told Don,
"As you knew, President Carter's being in town this Saturday, talking at Start High School about 10 o'clock, and they're looking for a place for him to make his major agriculture address, and if selected, would you be willing?"
After some thought, Schaller agreed. Quickly, news spread of the president's plan to visit the farm.
Could hardly pull in off the road. There was a big mob scene in the driveway, probably 40, 50 people.
He says after days of preparation, which included numerous security sweeps, the big day finally came.
And when the president got there, we went out to the road and greeted him, and we went in the house, and I gave him the gift of a vest and a cap, and he told me briefly what he was there for and gave his speech. Came back in the house afterwards and visited for 20 minutes, half hour. Advance people said he rarely does this. He really does. But I imagine being back on the farm, he felt at home.
For Don, he says it was an experience he'll never forget.
Well, I felt it was a privilege and an honor. It's an event that very few people get the opportunity to participate in. But I don't view it as any great achievement on my part because I had what the president was looking for.
A great tribute to President Jimmy Carter's life and legacy. But Carter wasn't the only president to spend time here in our area, nor was he the first. President Harry Truman stopped in Toledo twice as president, the first time on September 6, 1948 during a campaign tour. He and stopped at Penn Station and delivered a midnight speech. Now, on another occasion, he stayed at the Commodore Perry Hotel, famously slipping away from Secret Service for an early morning walk. Toledo 11's Stu Nicholson, he went to Fostoria in 1984, and the people there did not forget President Truman's time in Northwest Ohio.
October 11th, 1948, in the political fight of his life, President Harry Truman takes to the rails in Ohio, telling voters the Republicans are trying to fool the many into voting for the interests of the few. A message he carries nationwide in a whirlwind series of whistle stops, trying to reverse what pollsters say is GOP candidate Thomas E. Dewey's substantial lead. "Give 'em hell, Harry," was the shout heard in Fostoria, Ohio, when the Truman train pulled in at the Baltimore and Ohio station, and the echoes are still here, just like the station.
He got a tremendous reception. Big crowd was here. Lots of response, clapping hands and cheering and so forth and so on.
Paul Krupp remembers how the crowd of over 1,500 waited and wondered before Truman's train arrived.
If Truman looked like what they thought he looked like, you know, and how he would act, and whether he was to be pleasant and jovial and so forth and so on, what he was going to talk about that would strike their wishes and so forth, and he was well received.
Wasn't like they were able to see him on television every night like they are now.
No.
Paul says President Reagan would probably get the same reception today, but the Reagan whistle stop won't pass through Fostoria. The only passing trains today will be freight trains, but the echoes of 1948 are still here. Stu Nicholson, Toledo 11 News, Fostoria.
President Dwight Eisenhower visited Toledo twice during duck hunting seasons. He enjoyed private outings at the Cedar Point Club in what is now Maumee Bay State Park. President Lyndon Johnson made a non-election visit to assess the devastation that was caused by the Palm Sunday tornadoes in 1965. Gerald Ford campaigned in Northwest Ohio during his re-election bid, hosting an event at Anderson Arena in Bowling Green, where he famously fell after being startled by a camera flash in 1976. Then President Carter's visit in 1980. The next year, in November of 1981, WTOL 11 moved to its new home right here on Summit Street. And the studio you see behind me was the set for the news at 6 and 11. 3 years after that, President Ronald Reagan stumped in the area. From building the stage to securing and sprucing up the city, it took days of preparation to make it possible. And on October 12, 1984, the day finally arrived. Toledo 11's Jeff Heitz was live in the field from Deschler.
WTOL Toledo 11. Now from the Toledo 11 newsroom, Jeff Heitz, Jill Olmstead, meteorologist Charlie Empenauer, and Horace Tafner with sports. This is Toledo 11 News.
Evening from Deschler, Ohio, where we're awaiting the Heartland Express. That's what they're calling the presidential trip through Western Ohio. Today we're at the 5th stop, Deschler, Ohio. The president is running about 50 minutes behind schedule. He's due in 3 to 4 minutes from Ottawa. The first security train has already come through, has checked to see that the tracks are clear. They apparently are. And I think I see a train light in the distance. Now, we didn't plan it this way, but I think that train will be here while we're still on the air here in the early parts of this newscast. As we mentioned, Deschler is the 5th stop. The president started his day in Dayton, with stops then in Sydney, Lima, Ottawa, and he'll be going from here on to Perrysburg. As I said, Deschler is 5th. Terry Thill was in Lima when the president stopped there, and we have that report.
This was just the warm-up. Lima politicians coaching the crowd to try to outdo the president's enthusiastic reception 2 weeks ago in Bowling Green. The crowd, estimated at 28,000, continued to file in past tight security. The president's train was 30 minutes late, but the crowd was still ready. Mr. Reagan spoke from a platform and not from the back of Harry Truman's famous whistle-stop train car. He quickly took the offensive, knocking his opponent, Walter Mondale.
But I've always said that the best part of this job is remembering that George Bush and I are working for you and nobody else. You've done a great job here in Lima. You've got agriculture, you've got basic industry, you've got some of the new industries that are opening up. You're helping keep our defenses strong by building the M1 tank at the General Dynamics plant.
In a 20-minute speech, Mr. Reagan also told the crowd that he would not take Social Security benefits away from senior citizens and that he believes that religion and politics can coexist. At times, there were boos heard and some anti-Reagan signs popped up in the crowd. The president paid no attention and finished with the flag and lots of red, white, and blue. Unless the president can make up some time in the next couple of hours, he's going to be late coming into Perrysburg. His train is not leaving Lima until at least 45 minutes after it was supposed to. Terry Phillips, Toledo 11 News in Lima.
Back live in Deschler, if you hear a train whistle, that's the president's train. And finally, this crowd is beginning to cheer. Now, almost every Republican politician in Henry and Wood County is here, and they've been trying to pep up this crowd for nearly 4 hours. It didn't help being 50 minutes late. This crowd got just a bit restive. They've had the bands playing, but pretty soon the man they've come to hear or to possibly criticize and chant against, because there are some Mondale Ferraro signs in the crowd, he'll be speaking to them. There'll be a slight delay, Jill, because first of all, the national news media has to come running off the train. They'll be coming running right past my position here, so I'll probably have to get out of their way. And maybe later in the newscast, we can come back to you and tell you what the president had to say to the folks in Corn City, Deschler, Ohio. Jill, back to you for now.
Okay, Jeff, can you still hear me? Yes. Okay, it sounds like there is a large crowd there. Any way of estimating how many people might be there to greet the president?
Jill, I was never very good at that. It's several thousand. They're from all over. Archbold, Patrick Henry High School Band, about 7 different bands here. Several thousand, Jill.
And lots of excitement and signs and exciting place to be at this moment.
Yeah, now they're starting to cheer. They've been practicing their cheers for about the last hour, and they got sort of tired of doing that.
Anything in particular that they're saying, like 4 more years, or?
Yeah, everything you've heard before, Jill. Yeah, Reagan, Bush, 84, 4 more years, the whole thing.
4 years later, President Reagan returned to Northwest Ohio. He spoke in Bowling Green on October 19th, 1988. That was at the Wood County Airport. Then he headed to Toledo Express, where Toledo 11's Amy Marsalis reported.
There you go, United States of America. Ooh.
Seeing the president, if only from a distance, is an experience these people wanted to have. And even though it was a brief stop, they can tell their friends and families they did see our chief executive. Among the band of supporters, Cora Myers, who's never seen a president in person.
Oh, wonderful. Never had that opportunity again, I don't think. Too old for that.
Her husband, Cy, was also excited, even though he's not a Reagan backer.
It was a thrill to see him. It was.
Many of the people in the VIP section are relatives of local law enforcement officers. Among them, Terry Shanto, who's been a Reagan supporter for years.
It was short, but it was neat. It was really neat. He's so handsome, just like TV, you know? But I'm very excited.
Then there's Paula Kuhn, a Tippin woman whose son is a personal aide to the president. She wouldn't have missed this for anything. Paula was even treated to a visit on board the president's plane before he left.
You feel pins and needles. It feels like, you know, it's not real.
Most of the people here at Toledo Express weren't able to see President Reagan speak in Bowling Green, but they were able to wave hello and goodbye to the president they may never see again in person. Amy Marsalis, Toledo 11 News.
The 41st president continued the tradition of spending time in Northwest Ohio. George H.W. Bush made several trips as vice president. He campaigned in Toledo during the 1988 election and made a stop in Bowling Green on a train tour in October of 1992. It was August 27, 1996, when President Bill Clinton headed to the Glass City. But it wasn't for the city's namesake. Instead, he celebrated Jeep's legacy during a visit marking the production of the 2 millionth Jeep at the plant. Toledo 11's Lou Hebert reports.
It was the marriage of politics and auto production. And Bill Clinton was both groom and best man for the day, taking vows of solidarity with the men and women who build the Jeeps in Toledo, including the 2 millionth Cherokee. The ceremony continued outside the historic factory, where Clinton and the entire wedding party marched to the stage amid the approval of the workers. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, a former Jeep worker, drew the loudest applause.
That this plant exists in the most culturally, ethnically, religiously diverse part of my district. To me, it is America.
The president, wearing the union label, talked about the economy today and how Chrysler and Jeep workers helped build it by building American cars that are now attractive to foreign buyers.
You know, just 4 years ago, this plant exported 17,500 Cherokees. This year, 41,500. That's what you did.
And he told the story of a recent visit to a Jeep sales showroom in Japan.
And I spoke to a Japanese family who told me how grateful they were that they had a chance to look around for what they thought was the very best vehicle for their family. And believe me, these people had looked around. They knew more about that Jeep than some of us do. It was amazing.
It was not amazing, however, that Bill Clinton enjoyed taking the powerful hand of labor today, and how many enjoyed giving it.
The appearance here makes us feel real good about our job situation here in Toledo.
Welfare reform and everything, he's going in the right directions. I'm proud of him as a president and 4 more years.
Some would say this marriage is no big surprise. Democrats and labor, after all, have been living together in the House of Politics a long time. But today in Toledo, Bill Clinton tried to keep the romance alive.
Lou Hebert with that report. And of course, presidential candidates and sitting presidents continue to take trips to our area. President George W. Bush met with Mexican President Vicente Fox in Toledo on September 6, 2001.
They visited children at the Gonzalez Center. The pair engaged in immigration and trade talks less than a week before 9/11. President Bush came back to Owens Community College in 2004 to discuss community education.
Thank you very much. Holy Toledo.
President Barack Obama visited Toledo as a candidate on February 24, 2008. He came back on October 14th that same year and stopped by to play basketball at the Summit Street YMCA before speaking at the Seagate Center.
My faith in the American people has been vindicated because everywhere I go, people are telling me we want something new.
Then again in 2011. President Obama was here twice in 2012, speaking in downtown Toledo in July, then again at Scott High School as part of a UAW Labor Day rally.
We weren't going to give up on your jobs and your families and your communities. We weren't going to let Detroit go bankrupt or Lordstown go bankrupt or Toledo go bankrupt. If we had turned our backs on you, if America had thrown in the towel like that, GM and Chrysler wouldn't exist today. The suppliers and the distributors that get their business from these companies would have died off too.
President Joe Biden has been in Northwest Ohio several times, mostly during his time as a vice president. Air Force Two touched down at Toledo Express on June 23, 2009. Then again on March 15, 2012, when he stopped at the UAW Hall. He came back on October 23rd of that same year and spoke at the University of Toledo.
Folks, we need you. We need you. Together we can win Ohio. We win Ohio. We win the election. So Ohio, we need you.
And returned as president to UAW Local 14 on October 12, 2020.
What about regular jobs during the pandemic? We've talked about auto and manufacturing. What are you going to do on day one? You're going to be inheriting this economy. It is your economy if you win.
Well, what's going to happen is we're going to create a public health corps as well. What we need in the United States is a public health corps that in fact can provide for jobs for literally over 400,000 people over the first couple of years. We got to get this COVID virus under control. But also we're going to make sure that we're in a situation where we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. But in the meantime, it depends on how badly he leaves me. what economy leaves me with. The House has already passed billions of dollars to help bail out companies that are going, small businesses that are going under, being able to have money to open up schools safely and businesses safely. I'm going to dip into that money. I'm going to get that done again, and we're going to spend it and grow the economy.
And candidate Donald Trump spent time in Toledo on July 27, 2016.
We will make America great again.
He spoke inside the Huntington Center and came back while president on January 9th, 2020.
This is bigger than it was in 2016 because in 2016 I said what we're going to do, but now I've completed more promises than I've made.
So Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan has had its share of visits from presidential candidates, I should say, but today's trip through time on the WTOL 11 Vault focused on those who ended up serving our country in the Oval Office. Our presentation is dedicated to former President Jimmy Carter. His life, his legacy, may he rest in peace.